All right, we're going to do the apron body. So I just basted on my straps and then I have pulled them towards the center of the apron. Now I'm gonna take my other piece that looks the exact same and I'm gonna put these pretty sides together. And we do this because we're gonna flip it. So I'm gonna match up these pieces and I wanna pay special attention to my corners and my edges to make sure that those are matched up. So then I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna pin these. And when you're pinning these straps, you wanna make sure that you just have a nice even pin there and that they're not tangled or that none of your piece right here is stuck up here, all right? So I'm gonna pin this whole thing, but I need to leave an opening because we're gonna flip it so that it can be right sides out. So the best place to do that is a corner or a side, not a corner. So I'm gonna do this right here. And what I like to do when I do this is I just put 2 pins, so kind of like X marks the spot. So I remember to start there and then stop here. So you don't wanna do a huge opening, but you wanna do it big enough so that it's easy to turn your fabric or your apron so that you can flip it. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish pinning that. So I'm now gonna stitch my apron. I'm gonna make sure that I turn my stitch length back to regulation, which is 2.5. And I'm going to be doing a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm gonna line it up right on that red line. I'm gonna start in the middle of one side where I put that X. And then I'm gonna remember to back stitch at the beginning and end. I'm gonna take out the pins before I sew them. And I'm also going to remember to pivot on my corners. So there are 4 corners on the bottom and then the corners on the top of my apron. All right, I have sewn the body of my apron. So now I'm going to do some clipping. So I'm gonna clip all the corners. This just helps when I'm turning, and you wanna make sure that you don't cut the stitching line. All right, and then I'm gonna do those other 2 corners. But what I wanna do here on the curve right here and right here is actually cut teeny tiny clips. And I wanna be really careful to make sure that I am not cutting into this stitching line. And you wanna do this along the whole curve because as you do this, what happens is it helps it to lay flat when you turn it right side out. So I'm gonna finish clipping these. I will clip those and clip the other 2 corners. All right, so I've clipped my corners and I have also clipped my curves. If you cut through the stitching line, then you can just go back and stitch over it. So I've got my edges here where I back stitched and left my spot open. So I'm going to flip this, and this is where it comes in handy to have a nice big opening to pull your apron through. And as you're doing this, you want to kind of pull the straps a little bit and pop out your corners so that it lays nice and flat. You can see there our neck strap. And over on this end, the other strap. And then we're just gonna push out those bottom corners. And you can grab a chopstick that we used for turning the straps if you would like, and you can use that to push out the corners. Sometimes people use pencils, but the sharp point can kind of poke through and cause a hole, so really good idea to use like the end of the pencil or to use a chopstick. And then you can see here that it went through there, right? That we didn't stitch that, but when we stitched them together, it's stitched. Okay, so I've got this. all flipped. It's looking very nice. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna iron it so that it lays flat. Then I'm gonna take out my grading sheet and I'm gonna grade myself, and then I'm gonna ask my teacher to grade me.